It was a base that was supposed to be a fortress. Impenetrable, unfindable, ungriefable. But it was not only found, but sabotaged. This is by far the most insane 2B2T story involving a base I've ever covered on this channel. So let's get right into this. It all started in June of 2020, when a few high-ranking members from the Spawn Masons decided to start a new group base on 2B2T. It was to be called Sky Mason. But this wouldn't be the typical base where you would just give other members the coordinates to its location. Too many bases have been lost due to untrustworthy members leaking coordinates. So what if you didn't even have to give the members coordinates at all? Now this just sounds crazy. A 2B2T base without coordinates? That doesn't even make any sense. Well, when you hear how this was done, it actually starts to make a lot of sense. The end goal of the Masons was to have a base exist on 2B2T, but nobody would actually be able to see the coordinates. And the way they did it was pure genius. Instead of players taking their own Minecraft accounts to the base coordinates on 2b2t.org, they would join a whitelisted proxy server that would log them onto one of a collection of Minecraft accounts staged at the base. So if a player with proxy access decided to grief the base, he would simply be removed from the whitelist. And most importantly, the coordinates that were sent to the client were offset to an arbitrary number. Alright, great. So the coordinates that were shown to the client were junk. But what if someone just reverse engineered the terrain to find the real coordinates? Well, the Masons thought of this. When the base was conceived, an enormous area, thousands of blocks wide, was excavated down to bedrock using TNT duper flying machines. You can't reverse engineer the terrain when there is none, but what if you tried to walk outside the excavated area with the proxy account? Well, it would disconnect you from the game. Okay, well you could just reverse engineer the coordinates with the bedrock patterns. Nope, the existing bedrock pattern from the proxy coordinates were sent instead. Alright then, what if you tried to use the block rotation? Nope, the block rotations would just send you to the junk coordinates shown through the client through the proxy. Even slimes were disabled in the proxy, as slime spawning chunks could be used to reverse engineer the coordinates. So because there was no possible way to extract the true location of the base, this meant that pictures and videos of Sky Mason could be shown freely on the internet without any risk of the base being leaked. And lots of media was shared, which included this screenshot of the base showing bedrock. This was of course easily reverse engineered to find that the coordinates were around 20 million blocks out. But that bedrock in the picture, of course, wasn't the actual bedrock of the base. It was just the bedrock pattern of the random coordinate offset the proxy server was assigned to. And yes, there were a few players that actually traveled 20 million blocks away from spawn just to find nothing. And we know that because an account was kept there just to track which players showed up there. What's even crazier is that some of those players actually decided to build structures there, creating what I like to call Sky Mason 2. So basically, Sky Mason was a fortress. No matter what methods players tried, there was no way to get the coordinates by reverse engineering. The only way you were able to get the coords was if you were very high up in the Spawn Mason hierarchy, or if you were a base hunter and just happened to find the base by random. Yeah. This actually happened. Multiple times too. There's many stories of how a few players found the base, and I'll share a few of them. One day, one of the base members who knew the real coordinates decided to fly far away from the base to find a big open ocean so he could make a map art. He eventually ran into a very old Infinite Ocean chunk trail. Now this type of Minecraft terrain hasn't been generated since the 1.6 update, and it's very distinctive by the splotchy pattern on the ocean bottom. At the time, this base member didn't realize what it was and decided to make his map art there anyways. This, of course, would be a huge mistake. Eventually, along came a base hunter by the name of Carpo Zero, who was following this ancient chunk trail only to find this massive uncompleted map art. He got a bit suspicious of its placement directly on an infinite ocean chunk trail and started following the new chunk trail that went directly back to Sky Mason. Once the Masons spotted him, they decided the best course of action was to invite him to the base. And he even actually started building with them too. After this incident, every last trace of this map art was wiped to help prevent any future encounters. But they still happened. Another base hunter found a portal that was accidentally left open in the Nether, with a chunk trail leading directly to the base. Looks like the Spawn Masons should have followed my advice in my How to Hide Your Base video. But the fact that the Masons decided to build the base less than 1 million blocks from spawn really didn't help much. Why would you put in all this effort to create a proxy system to hide the base's coordinates when the base was susceptible to random players finding it? This could have easily been prevented by simply building it further from spawn. And as a result, even more players would eventually find the base. And for each player who did, they were also invited to build there, but were told to keep their mouths shut regarding the true coordinates of Sky Mason. So how did Sky Mason eventually fall? Well, a ton of investigating was done after the griefing, and a few sources were ruled out. One idea was that because the base was active during the NOCOM exploit, someone who had access to the exploit's database possibly gave coordinates to the griefers. Another was maybe one of the players who found the base gave coordinates to some untrustworthy people. Now, I can't confirm with 100% certainty what actually happened, but most of the evidence points to an inciting member of the Spawn Masons who spilled the beans to the Fifth Column, one of the most notorious griefing groups on 2B2T. However, I wasn't told specifically who that member was, but what I do know was the reason why this member leaked the coordinates. Now, I can't really share any details regarding it, as the topic wouldn't be appropriate for YouTube, but what I can say is that the member had a moral dilemma regarding the knowledge of a situation that allegedly happened involving a few Spawn Masons in real life. Basically, he didn't approve of what those individuals allegedly did, so he decided to leak the base to Orsund, the leader of the Fifth Column, as retaliation. Now, to make sure that he didn't have bogus coordinates, he would have to scout out the base at some point. But an immediate issue arises. Because the base was so active, there would have likely been a player online 24/7, so any stranger would have immediately been caught. But somehow, the stars aligned, and near the same time Orsund got these coordinates, Housemaster reopened the 2B2T test server hosting the original map. So one of the other Fifth Column members, Bezo, traveled to the base on the test server, and unbelievably, it was there. But he didn't want to initially load it all in, just in case there happened to be a member there on the test server. The Fifth Column now had its target set. All that was left to do was grief. For over 3 hours, the Fifth Column would grief Sky Mason. But it wasn't just that group who did it. Storm Surge, the leader of Team Evolution, one of the most influential Minecraft griefing groups of all time, joined in on his first major 2B2T grief. And at the same time all this was going on, another 2B2T player named ZeroNeb was also griefing Sky Mason on the test server just so the Masons couldn't use it as a backup. Now, because it was just one player griefing this base, it took him over 30 hours to do. That just goes to show how large this base actually was. And that was it. The coordinates were eventually leaked to the public, and Sky Mason was completely destroyed. So here are some of my overall thoughts about Sky Mason. When the base was still active, I was actually personally invited to it, and was offered access to one of the proxies. but I decided not to accept the invite. Why, you may ask? Well, there were a few reasons. First off, I questioned whether the base even existed on 2B2T due to the way the proxy was set up. Of course I know now it exists, but at the time, I was skeptical. And secondly, I found it a bit unsettling not being able to use my own account at the base. It kinda felt like I would have no longer had a sense of ownership on the server, so I never ended up joining. In the end, the base did get found, but it wasn't the proxy's fault at all. Everything the proxy did to keep the coordinates secret worked flawlessly. So if the base was built farther from spawn, wasn't connected to existing chunk trails, had no open nether portals, and had no insiders, this base would probably still be active to this very day.